Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Robert Harper, and we are here to discuss as we sit in your beautiful cathedral. And allow me, could you introduce yourself to me?
Sure. So I am most commonly referred to as the Very Reverend Dr. Shelley-Ann Tenia,
Yes.
Dean and Rector of Holy Trinity Cathedral, or formerly the Cathedral Church of the Holy Trinity.
Okay, that's a heavy title. Do you have a nameplate on your door with
No,
all
I
those
do
things?
not.
What's written on your door?
Nothing. Welcome.
Oh, okay, that's excellent. So we are here, so let's talk heritage.
Sure.
Okay, excellent. So we did a nice flowing conversation we were having this morning. So there's a few questions, but the questions will drive us to different discussions. Good. Okay, so that beautiful title that you gave just now, what does that role encompass within the cathedral?
Okay, so the cathedral is two things. It's what we like to call the Mother Church.
Yes.
It's the seat of the bishop, or actually just adjacent to the bishop's cathedra, from which the cathedral gets its name, because it's the seat of the bishop. It's the bishop's throne, in other words.
Okay.
And so this is essentially the bishop's church, and it represents the entire diocese, essentially. So that's why it's called the Mother Church, and it is to set the standard for the diocese in matters of liturgy, worship, Christian education, formation, civic engagement, and community collaboration, ethics, the whole gamut,
Wow.
essentially. And so the cathedral functions iconically in that way. It's the place where all of our diocesan services get held. So our synod opening services held here, our ordinations are held here.
Okay.
So it represents all of who we are as Anglicans, essentially. And so what it also does then is represent the Anglican Church to the nation. Okay. So it functions in that civic way. Yes, to kind of be that bridging place and that bridging space, and make space for the connections between the church and the community. Okay. But in addition to that, the cathedral is also a parish community, which essentially means that it has a community here, a community of worshippers who come from all around Port of Spain and environs and beyond, because for most people, even though they've moved out of the Port of Spain area and into the suburbs and further east and even further west, it's their family church. Okay. And so they come back on a Sunday for worship. And so it functions as a local parish community as well. And so that's why Dean and Rector. The Rector piece is the pastoral piece. So the Rector is the person who is responsible for the cure of souls in a parish community. Right. So that's the Rector function. And the Dean function is all those big grand things. So representing the bishop, representing the diocese, being a bridge between diocese and the wider parish, all the other 30 parishes in the diocese, as well as the representative of the church in civic and community matters as well.
When are your office hours? 24 office hours are 24 hours then?
My office hours are the same as any other priest.
Oh, no, with all those responsibilities, it certainly sounds like your office hours are a little longer.
The Lord and I get very creative.
Okay, excellent. So you create time then?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Because God can do that.
Yes.
And I do sleep, I promise.
Okay, excellent. So we are sitting in this beautiful cathedral. Tell me a little bit about the history of this wonderful historical building.
Sure. So the Anglican Church actually has been in Trinidad since 1801. Okay. It was not here. It was originally actually the corner of Prince and Frederick Street, where Woodford Square is. And that corner, originally.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then it burnt down. And it wasn't originally the cathedral. Of course, it was just a church. It was a parish church. It's the first church in the first Anglican church in the country. When it burned down, they started to rebuild it in what once used to be called Brunswick Square, which is now Woodford Square. And people objected because at that time it was one of the few open spaces that people had to congregate. Okay. The governor at the time, who was Governor Woodford, who happened to also be Anglican, because he came from England. Decided, and the cathedral, Holy Trinity Church at the time was his church. Okay. And he decided that, because it was named a cathedral thereafter, somewhere later on, and he decided that he would use his good office to not only amass lands, but material, labor, and the skills of architects to build the new church on this spot. So he amassed the land using his good office. He used one of his friends who was an architect to do the design, and he basically oversaw the building of the cathedral until his death, actually. He died before it was fully completed. That's why there's a big monument to him by the southern door. But that's how we ended up here. So in 1823, almost 200 years ago, it would have been dedicated and consecrated as Holy Trinity Cathedral and as the kind of center of life for the Anglican Church. The cornerstone would have been laid in 1818, and then 5 years later, thereabouts, it was actually consecrated, was finished, and so on. So
1823. So
yes. So we're about to celebrate our bicentennial in 3 years.
Excellent. So I could imagine, as a result of that, there's a lot of work that you need to do to maintain and to keep the building in pristine manner.
Absolutely.
How do you all go about doing those things?
Carefully. Sorry, I missed out being silly.
No, that's a good answer.
So I think there are a couple of things that I think people need to be aware of. So the style of the cathedral is Gothic, that neo-Gothic style, and so that's why we have a 60-foot ceiling with hammer beams and all the lovely things, stained glass windows that come from England and everything. However, though, the maintenance of that over the years, we did not quite get right.
Okay.
So the nave was the main part that was built first, and then the narthex with the tower, bell tower, and that area got added on after.
Okay.
Yes? And what happened at some point, so we would have done kind of the first big restoration would have happened probably in the 80s.
Okay.
Yes? Then somewhere along the line, and I think this happened to other historical buildings in Port of Spain, some very wise person, don't know who they were, but in their wisdom decided that it would be a good idea to paint and use Portland cement on limestone buildings. And so went around limestone, put Portland cement on everybody and then covered the Portland cement with paint. Yes. And so and of course it looked pretty.
Initially, yes.
Initially, it looked very pretty.
But there's stuff going on underneath that.
Correct, that we have now inherited. So we've learned along the way. The hard way, but we've learned along the way. And so that's kind of why we are where we are at the moment. And so, because part of what also is required, maintenance of cathedrals in general, not only this one, cathedrals all around the world, requires ongoing maintenance. Most cathedrals have scaffolding around their buildings constantly because the point is it's constant work. Because you have to keep... Correct.
Raising funds for such.
Because the reality is you have to keep your downpipes clear, your gutters clear, so that water doesn't come in, the whole 9 yards. And of course, over the years, we've had a series of earthquakes.
Yes.
So the one that happened in 2018 was the one that was most devastating, that caused the cathedral to have to shut down. But that was not the first. There were several other earthquakes that happened before, and so some of the pinnacles, some of the things fell off. So we have some of those kind of, we pulled some of those off over time. But the one in 2018 was so bad, and we had sustained so much over time, and the Portland cement had started falling off because the walls were saturated, we had guttering issues and the like, that when the earthquake happened in 2018, that shut us down because we had several pinnacles fall off. We had cracks that emerged all over the building, especially on this eastern wall, which you can see if you look up. Our organ was compromised, so we really had to shut the place down and get a real sense of what was happening. We actually had the Portland cement taken off from the southern and northern walls as a start to just kind of keep the breathing to happen that needs to happen. So that's where we are. So as I said, we didn't quite get the maintenance right over the years, but we've learned.
Getting there.
Exactly, we've learned a lot. And having done the dilapidation survey, that gives us a real clear sense of what the status is across the entire building, we can move forward with the restoration in an informed way.
Okay, excellent. So as a result of 2018, I am sure that systems and teams were put in place to assist in the restoration, a better job in maintaining the building, and B, how we all go about, because one thing that is common throughout as we are doing these videos is these things cost money.
Yes, they do.
Yes, all right, and
plenty money.
And we're never fortunate enough to get these 6 numbers, so you can actually get a lotto, so you can actually fund those things. But so what are some of the things that you all learned internally as you all go about maintaining these buildings?
Well, I mean, one thing that we learned for sure, you see the gutters and downpipes, regardless of what, they need to be cleared constantly.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. We haven't mastered the art of keeping up with the plant growth yet. So every time we cut and poison, there's comeback. We haven't, too many pigeons, too many birds. And I think the only way to deal with that is to cut down the trees, and we're not prepared to cut down the trees at this point. So we're managing, we're managing that one. And just checking, like literally checking all of the spaces constantly, making sure that we are on top of anything that we notice as it comes. And we know that, well, the dilapidation survey has happened, and we are in the next phase of moving towards beginning the restoration work. So we're in the process of putting together the project management team services and ensuring that we're securing all of our professionals that need to be part of that process. And so the restoration will happen in phases. We're dealing with all the structural things first, because there's some really important structural things that need to happen. And once we deal with the structural things, that's going to be the first 2 phases. Then we're going to move into the other kinds of aesthetic and services things that need to happen.
I've learned certainly through these series of shows is the importance of these buildings, not only to the society but to people, because as you all know earlier there's a cruise ship, so you have tourists that come and just want to be around a building that is about to celebrate 200 years.
And it's a place of pilgrimage. Cathedrals in general, like other holy sites, are places of pilgrimage, and that's part of the role and function of a cathedral. It is a place of pilgrimage, and so yes, people are going to want to come, not just for the tourist factor, but for many people. We've had people who were children here in the 1950s and 40s who remember being a child here and come back, and they want to see where their grandfather may have been buried. So there's a lot of historical artifacts and a lot of emotional connection and family connection that is here as well. And so people come for those things also. Okay,
so your congregation feels that sort of connection to the building and to this physical structure, because it's not only, as I said, there's a spiritual connection that you also have. This is a place of worship.
This is church for the cathedral community here.
This is church. Yes.
When we had to shut those doors and we couldn't worship in here for 3 months, people cried. It scared people, because while we've had earthquakes before and there were other things, the last time the cathedral, people had no access to it is when it burned down over so. And people weren't alive at that point. None of the people who were alive then are alive now. They're not, So this was the first time, even with all that has happened, the coup has happened, earthquakes have happened, the place has flooded, but they never had to shut their doors.
Okay.
This time, they had to shut their doors. People cried.
Okay.
I think it scared them because they weren't sure what was going to happen,
Okay, but that's heartwarming, there's that connection, because at least that will certainly assist in people seeing the importance of keeping the structure alive, keeping it up, keeping it running. This is because I'm going to be very honest with you. This is the first time I'm inside the cathedral.
Right.
So when you come and you see the artwork and you see, now using the word artwork because I don't know the actual terminology of the arches that at the roof.
You mean the hammer beam trusses? They're hammer beams, but they're works of art, really. The stained glass windows, they're works of art. They're the work of human hands, and yes, they can be admired, and yes, they kind of inspire you. But really and truly, that's what they're intended to do.
Yes.
They're intended to cause you to look up. to be in awe of God and what God can make happen through human hands and the creative spirit that flows through people of faith, and how that gets expressed in these features. And it really is a phenomenal kind of thing.
Yes.
And the history of this cathedral that it holds is of great significance also to the state. If you look at Parliament Channel and you look at that footage that deals with the opening of Parliament for the first time when they had the procession down Hart Street and they were walking into a church on the northern side, it is this church they were walking into through Hart Street.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is this church they would have been walking into.
Okay.
And there was a time when slaves could not face the high altar. That's why there are 4 sanctuaries in this building. We have a lady chapel.
Can you give me that again?
Sure,
Yes.
I will. So there's a lady chapel on the northeastern side.
Yes.
There's the high altar, which is to the east, the furthest eastern point, directly opposite the western door. We have a cube altar that is more modern and contemporary. And then we have the All Souls altar that is down to the western door on the northern side. That was called the slave altar. We now call it the All Souls altar, but it was the slave altar. That was the place where slaves received communion because they were not allowed to come to the high altar.
Wow.
They were not allowed to mingle with everybody else, to participate in worship.
Okay, well, some teaching is occurring here.
Yeah, and so that, I love being in this space because it's so full of who we are.
Yes, yes.
The limestone around, we in Laventil, all of the limestone in here was quarried from the quarries of Laventil. Okay. Yeah, it makes my paws raise and warms my heart every time I have to talk about this place and what it represents.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
All right. The Very Reverend Dr. Shelley-Ann Tenia, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so as you gave us a beautiful rendition of this wonderful structure as we focus on as we talk heritage.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for taking the time to do this, because I think it will make a difference. The more people see it, the more awareness gets raised, and the more people realize that this belongs to every Trinidadian.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So thank you.
Thank you. Blessings.